Welcome back to the series. Today we're talking about prompt engineering, and I know what you're thinking. Great, another video with 10 secret prompts that will change everything. That's not what this is. Because here's the thing, the internet is flooded with prompt tricks and tips and magic phrases, but almost nobody explains what actually happens when you change your prompt. Why does rewording something make the output better? Why does the same tip work in one situation and completely fail in another? Once you understand the mechanism, you won't need to memorize formulas. You'll be able to construct effective prompts for any situation. Let's figure out how this actually works. If you spend any time in AI communities online, you've seen this pattern. Everyone's got the magic phrase, the secret template, the one weird trick that professionals don't want you to know. These posts get thousands of likes, hundreds of shares. Just add these 3 words and watch your results transform. And look, some of these tips do work, sometimes, for some people, in certain contexts. But here's what nobody talks about: why they work. What's the mechanism? Why does adding think step by step sometimes improve responses and sometimes just make the output more verbose? Why does specifying a role help with some requests but do nothing for others? Without understanding the why, you're just collecting tricks and hoping they apply to your situation. That's not how you get consistently good results. Here's the frustrating experience everyone has at some point. You see a prompt tip that's getting amazing results for other people. Looks perfect for what you need, so you try it, and it works brilliantly. AI produces exactly what you were hoping for. Great. So you try the same approach with a different request. Same tip, same structure, similar situation, and this time it fails. The output is generic, or off target, or just not what the tip promised. What changed? The tip is the same, the AI model is the same. So why did it work in one context and fail in another? This is what drives people crazy about prompt engineering. It feels inconsistent, unpredictable, like there's no underlying logic you can rely on. But there is, and once you see it, everything makes sense. So let's clear something up right away. Prompt engineering is not magic. It's not secret words that unlock hidden AI capabilities. It's not mysterious insider knowledge. It's not formulas you memorize and apply blindly. What it actually is: understanding how your input shapes the pattern AI completes. Remember, AI is doing pattern completion. That's the core mechanism. So when you change your prompt, you're not giving clearer instructions to something that understands instructions. You're changing what patterns the system matches against how it generates its response. Different words activate different patterns. Different structures create different completion paths. Different constraints narrow the output space. Once you understand this mechanism, really internalize it, you can construct effective prompts for situations you've never encountered before. Not because you memorize the right formula, but because you understand what you're actually doing. Let's ground this in what we've already built. Way back in video 1, we established the fundamental truth. AI is pattern completion. Not thinking, not reasoning, not understanding in the way humans understand. It recognizes patterns in your input, matches them against patterns it learned during training, and generates text that fits those patterns. This isn't a limitation we need to work around. This is the key insight that unlocks everything about prompt engineering. Every technique you've ever seen, every magic phrase, every template, every tip works because of how it shapes pattern completion. That's it. There's no other mechanism at play. So when we talk about improving prompts, we're really talking about how do you structure your input to make pattern completion work in your favor? How do you activate the right patterns? How do you narrow the options so AI completes the pattern you actually want? That's what prompt engineering is. When you change your prompt, here's what's really happening. You're not given clear instructions. Instructions imply something that understands and follows directions. That's not what's happening. Think of it more like changing your search query. If you search for restaurant, you get millions of results. If you search for authentic Thai restaurant downtown Milwaukee under $30, you get a much narrower, more relevant search. Same idea with prompts. A vague prompt activates millions of possible patterns. AI has to pick from this enormous range of possibilities. A specific, well-structured prompt narrows that dramatically. And here's something subtle but important. The AI processes your prompt sequentially, word by word, building context as it goes. Early words influence how later words are interpreted. Change the order, and you're literally selecting from a different set of patterns. This is why prompt engineering isn't just be more detailed. It's about understanding how your words shape the pattern space AI is working within. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Take a simple request. Write a product description. What patterns could match this? Millions. Technical specs versus emotional benefits. Formal versus casual. Short versus detailed. Any product category imaginable. AI has this overwhelming range of possibilities to choose from. Now compare that to write a product description like this example, and you show a specific example with clear structure, defined tone, obvious length. Same core request, but the second version has narrowed pattern space dramatically. AI isn't choosing from millions of options anymore. It's matching against things that look like this example. And this is the key insight. You're not being more detailed, you're narrowing pattern space. You're reducing ambiguity about which pattern to complete. When people say, be more specific in your prompts, this is why. Not because AI understands better when you're specific, but because specificity narrows which patterns get activated. Now, let me give you 4 principles for effective prompting, and I'm calling them principles for a reason. These aren't tricks you memorize. They're ways of thinking that come directly from understanding how AI works. Each one connects back to concepts we've covered in previous videos. Pattern completion from video 1, context windows from video 2, hallucinations from video 3, strengths and weaknesses from video 4. Principle 1. Structure input as a clear pattern. Give AI an obvious pattern to follow. Principle 2. Front load critical information. Put what matters first in the context window. Principle 3. Constrain the output explicitly. Reduce space where AI might fabricate. Principle 4. Frame tasks as pattern work. Avoid asking for reasoning AI can't do. If you understand these 4 principles, you can reason about any prompt. You'll know why it works or why it doesn't. You'll be able to diagnose problems and fix them systematically. Let me break down each one. First principle, structure your input as a clear pattern. AI completes patterns, so instead of describing what you want, show the pattern itself. Here's a structure that works really well. Bad examples look like X, good examples look like Y. Here's my input Z, write a good one. Why does this work? You've created a clear trajectory. Bad leads to good. Input leads to output. The pattern AI needs to complete is obvious. This isn't just being detailed. You've established a pattern where the relationship between good and bad is explicit, and AI can see exactly where your input fits in that progression. Compare this to just saying, write a good version of this. What does good mean? AI has to guess which interpretation of good you want from thousands of possibilities. But when you show bad versus good examples, you're pointing directly at the pattern. No ambiguity, no guessing, just clear completion. This is why examples work so well in prompts. They show the pattern directly instead of forcing AI to infer it from descriptions. Second principle, front load critical information. Remember context windows from video 2? AI can only see a limited amount of text at once. As conversations get longer or prompts get more complex, earlier information becomes less influential. So if you bury your most important constraint at the end of a long prompt, it might barely register in the pattern completion. Here's what not to do. Write 3 paragraphs of background and context, then at the very end mention, oh, and keep it under 100 words. By the time AI processes all that context, the word limit has minimal impact. Instead, lead with, keep this under 100 words. Here's the context. Now that constraint is prominent throughout the entire process of your prompt. This connects directly to how context windows work. Information at the beginning stays visible and influential as AI processes the rest of your input. Information buried at the end might barely register. Critical constraints belong at the top, always. Third principle, constrain the output explicitly. This one connects to hallucinations from video 3. Remember, AI fabricates when it's completing patterns, but lacks sufficient matches. It fills gaps with plausible sounding stuff. Specific constraints reduce the space where this can happen. What are the pros and cons? This is wide open. AI could list 2 items or 20. Could prioritize any aspects. Lots of room to invent pros and cons to make the answer feel complete. List exactly 3 pros and 3 cons. Much harder to fabricate. The structure is defined, 6 specific items required. You're not just asking for less, you're reducing degrees of freedom. When output space is narrow and well defined, there's less room for AI to fill gaps with fabricated information. This is why specific formats, explicit structures, and clear boundaries improve reliability. Not because AI tries harder when you're specific, but because you've reduced the space where pattern completion might generate plausible nonsense. Fourth principle, frame tasks as pattern work, not reasoning. From video 4, we learned AI excels at pattern recognition but struggles with actual reasoning. When you frame prompts to play to pattern strengths, you get reliable results. Organize these customer comments by theme. This is asking for pattern recognition. What topics cluster together? What languages appear repeatedly? AI can spot these patterns. Calculate which category is most severe. This requires reasoning, comparing, weighing factors, making judgments. AI will generate text that looks like reasoning, but the logic might be flawed. Same information, different framing. One plays to AI's strengths, the other asks it to do something it can't actually do. This principle is about knowing when you're asking AI to complete patterns versus when you're asking it to reason. If the task fundamentally requires reasoning, either reframe it as pattern work or recognize you might need a different tool entirely. Now let me show you how understanding the mechanism helps you evaluate popular tips. You've definitely seen this one. Add "let's think step by step" to your prompt for better reasoning. Does it make AI reason better? No, AI still can't actually reason. That hasn't changed from video 4. So why does this tip sometimes work? You're narrowing pattern space to detailed, methodical explanations. AI has seen millions of examples of people working through problems step by step. By using that phrase, you're pointing it toward those patterns. When does it help? When generating a more structured, careful response would be useful. The output looks like step by step reasoning and is more detailed. When does it fail? When the task actually requires logical reasoning or calculation. Adding think step by step doesn't give AI reasoning capabilities it doesn't have. It just makes the wrong answer more verbose. Understanding this, knowing why the tip works and when it fails, is more valuable than just memorizing add this phrase. Here's another popular one. Start prompts with act as a technical writer or act as a marketing expert. What's actually happening? You're narrowing which pattern AI draws from. Technical writer activates patterns of clear, structured documentation with specific terminology and formatting conventions. Marketing expert activates patterns of persuasive, benefit-focused copy. It reduces ambiguity. Instead of matching against all writing patterns in AI's training, you're targeting a specific subset. But here's why it sometimes doesn't work. If the role doesn't meaningfully narrow pattern space for your specific requests, it does nothing. Act as an expert is too vague. Expert at what? How does that change the pattern? It doesn't really, so the output stays the same. The tip works when the role genuinely targets a distinct pattern space. It fails when the role is too vague to change which patterns get activated. Again, understanding this mechanism tells you when to use this and when it's pointless. Here's something people discover through trial and error. Changing the order of your prompt changes the output. Why? It seems like AI should understand what you mean regardless of order, right? But remember, AI processes your input sequentially, token by token, building context as it goes. Early words influence how later words are interpreted. Write formally about dogs versus write about dogs formally. The first one establishes formal tone first, then applies it to dog content. The pattern is formal writing style applied to topic. Second one establishes dog content first, then tries to apply formality. The pattern is casual topic with formal overlay attempted. Same words, different order, different patterns activated. This is why structure matters. You're not just listing requirements, you're establishing the path through pattern space. The sequence matters because it determines which patterns dominate the completion. One of the most reliable techniques is providing examples, and understanding why this works help you use examples effectively. When you provide an example, you're showing the exact pattern you want. AI can match against things like this instead of interpreting your description of things like this. Descriptions are ambiguous. Professional tone could mean dozens of different things, but an example shows exactly which interpretation of professional you mean. Structure, length, style, tone. It's all visible at once in the example. AI sees the complete pattern rather than assembling it from separate instructions. When should you use examples? When the desired output has specific structure, when the style is hard to describe, when previous attempts got you the wrong result. When are they not needed? When the pattern is already obvious, when the request is straightforward, when you actually want exploration rather than replication of a specific pattern. Examples clarify pattern directly. One good example often communicates more than paragraphs of descriptions. Okay, so here's your framework for thinking about any prompt. 4 questions that help you reason about whether your prompt will work. First, what pattern am I asking AI to complete? Can you articulate it? Is it clear and unambiguous? Or could it match thousands of different things? Second, is all critical information front loaded and visible? Are your constraints at the beginning where they'll influence everything, or buried where they might be ignored? Third, have I constrained output to reduce fabrication? Have you specified structure, format, boundaries? Or is there open space where AI might fill gaps with plausible fabrications? Fourth, am I asking for pattern work or reasoning? Does this require actual logical reasoning or calculation? If so, can you reframe it as pattern recognition, or do you need a different tool? Answer these 4 questions before you even try the prompt, and you'll know whether it's likely to work. This turns prompt engineering from random trial and error into systematic design. And when prompts fail, you can diagnose why systematically. Result is vague or off target. Pattern space is too broad. Fix, add specificity, provide examples, narrow the options. Results ignore your constraints. Constraint is buried or unclear. Fix, front load critical information, make it explicit and prominent. Results contain fabrications. Your output space is too open. The fix, add explicit constraints, specify structure, reduce ambiguity. Result is logically wrong. This task requires reasoning AI can't do. The fix, reframe as pattern work, or recognize you're using the wrong tool. Each failure pattern points to a specific solution. You're not guessing randomly at fixes. You understand which mechanism broke down, so you know how to fix it. This is the difference between understanding and memorizing. Understanding lets you diagnose and solve problems you haven't seen before. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. Prompt engineering is applied and understanding. It's not magic words, it's not secret formulas, it's reasoning about the mechanism. When you understand how AI completes patterns, you can shape your input accordingly. You're not instructing something that follows directions. You're directing pattern completion. What this means practically, you can construct effective prompts for new situations. Not just situations you've seen examples for, genuinely new contexts where you apply the principles. You can evaluate tips you see online. When someone shares a breakthrough prompt, you can reason about why it works and when it won't. You understand why things work, not just that they work, which means you can adapt and apply principles flexibly instead of rigidly following templates. Understanding beats memorization every time. Well, this completes our foundational series, 5 videos building a complete mental model of how AI actually works. Video 1 was our pattern completion, the core mechanism. Video 2 was context windows, understanding AI's limitations. 3 was hallucinations, why AI fabricates. 4, strengths and weaknesses, what AI can and cannot do. And today, video 5, prompt engineering, is applying and understanding to get better results. Each concept builds on the last. Together, they give you genuine comprehension, not just surface level tricks. If you found this valuable, subscribe. We'll keep building on this foundation with more fundamental AI concepts explained clearly. And if you're thinking about applying these principles in your business, building effective AI workflows based on real understanding, let's talk. Reach out to us from the description. Thanks for following along through the series. We'll see you in the next one.